I wanted to kind of start off with a slide that gets us kind of overall thinking about our goals for a safe patient handling program and kind of in the right mindset for what we're focused on. So if you haven't seen this before, this is Arjo's Positive 8 philosophy of healthcare. At the very center of the Positive 8, we have the 3 prerequisites for being able to mobilize patients safely. The first one is we have to have the right environment. The second one, the right equipment. And 3, we have to have the right care skills. So with one of those items missing, it's a challenge to be able to deliver care or mobilize our patients and residents more safely. If we have like a great big space with lots of room and beautiful brand new equipment, but we don't have the skills to use it, then we're at risk of injury. And just like that, any other piece that's missing is a challenge. So you'll notice the top part of the Positive 8 is kind of focused around the resident, and the bottom part is focused around the caregiver, but they kind of feed into each other. So our goal with our safe patient handling program and in caring for our residents is to enhance their mobility and mobilize them as much as possible consistent with their safety. We do that because we know when we're immobile, just about every system of our body starts to break down, or we become having challenges with parts of our body. Staying in bed for a prolonged period of time causes constipation. It decreases our bone mass if we're lying down all the time. We are at risk of pneumonias and pressure injuries, and as well as bladder problems, just about every system of the body. And also the mind, it's hard on us when we lie down all of the time or we're not interacting and being social or being productive. So we mobilize our patients and focus our goal on mobilizing our residents as much as possible consistent with their safety to improve their vital functions so that they have reduced consequences of immobility and a better quality of life. And that feeds down into our caregiver loop. If we have residents who are more mobile with a better quality of life, then they don't need as much support, or they don't need as much assistance, or they don't need as much care as far as medications and treatments. If they require less support, then that's reduced load and workload on our care staff. If our care staff have a bit of a reduced load, then they won't be as at risk for injuries, not as tired, they'll be more productive. And usually people that are happy and productive in their work and not hurt tend to stay in their job. So having more active residents leads to less sick time or turnover or compensation claims for our staff, and that provides better financial outcomes for the facility. Or the home. So with better financial outcomes, what are we going to do with that money? Maybe put it back into the middle, renovate some spaces that aren't serving us, update our equipment when it's getting older, provide more care skills or more knowledge for our care partners. So this is just kind of our overarching philosophy of our patient handling program. Our goal is to mobilize our patient, and that is the reason why. So first, it always takes a team, right? There has to be people dedicated to solving a problem or managing a program to keep it running. So building a team that's focused on patient handling goals is important for the maintenance of the team and the success of the program. Peer leadership is a great way to manage the team. And I took this quote from the Safe Care BC website, leading from the inside out. Having unit designated in-house safe patient handling experts means that you can solve problems in real time without having to be at risk for prolonged periods of time without problems getting addressed. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a shift in culture if we're working on changing certain practices in our patient handling program, and having those in-house resources allows you to maintain gentle pressure relentlessly applied, and that's a necessary ingredient for changing a culture. Some roles and responsibilities of a safe patient handling program or a member of a safe patient handling program. Handling new hire and ongoing training for the staff. We want to make sure that when new hires are getting trained, that they're getting trained with the right skills and knowledge. Your team leaders in patient handling become role models for their colleagues. They can help with assessments. So right now, if we're always having to call in allied health, for example, for patient handling assessments, it's timely, right? There's time that we have to wait in between having them come in, and they're not always there all of the time. So having in-house resources means that I can provide assessments a lot quicker for most of my residents and just rely on allied health for special cases. They help with communicating the policy and procedure to the team. And often policy and procedure is written and then it's kind of forgotten. Most of the time when I go into homes and ask about policy and procedure, we know some of it, but when we dig into it, we find really a lot of good resources in our policy and procedure. So part of your safe patient handling program would be a really good understanding of your policy and procedure for your peer leaders to help guide their behavior and advise their team. Equipment management is also a role and responsibility of a patient handling team manager. They can make recommendations about different equipment if the equipment that you have is not serving them well, or different training if we need to upgrade our skills in certain areas. So these are all things that creating an in-house team can do to support your program. And then any good program, of course, requires oversights. It's recommended, just like a JOSH committee, that a safe patient handling team meets regularly to discuss the program and items that are on the regular agenda. It's important that performance is measured, and we usually look at the metric of injuries and staff satisfaction. And then it's also important to document their activities. So typically, just like a JOSH committee, a safe patient handling team would meet quarterly or whatever is the right increment for supporting your program based on your stage of development. And they would have an agenda that they would discuss, and they would have action items that they made recommendations to the management with. So what are some good characteristics of a team member for a safe patient handling team? We want people with good communication skills, probably somebody that the staff are already listening to and that are well liked. We want people who are passionate and committed to improving safe patient handling and safety overall for the home. We want people who are positive, who are innovative or creative at solving problems, and also people who will work well within your team. So some homes put out a request for people to apply for their safe patient handling program in order to get interest from people who might want to take on larger roles in mentoring of their colleagues. And some homes, identify those people within their staff that would be a good fit. So key initiatives for any safe patient handling program. Again, we want to improve clinical, operation, and financial outcomes. That is our goal. And there's 4 steps that we kind of cycle through as far as maintaining the program. Probably a lot of your homes already have lots of things in place already. It might not have been stuff that's at the top of the list for priorities of things to work on, but when the patient handling program does bubble to the top of the list, an audit of what you've got in place already is a great place to start. We want to have a good understanding of the needs of your care receivers and also a good understanding of the risk to your care staff. Understanding those 2 pieces will highlight priorities and opportunities for what the program needs and help you to guide your way forward. So starting out with assessing your equipment, is it all in good working order? Is it still serving your needs? Understanding your process, and then defining any goals or measurements of success. The next step is designing what we would like to modify in the program. So solutions that you might recommend to upgrade skills, upgrade equipment, or change how we work in the environment. We would map processes and design any key performance indicators. Move the training forward. I got disconnected. Are you still seeing my screen?
No, Jennifer, it must have disconnected. So if you can just reshare your screen.
Yeah. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was talking about implementation. Did we see that part?
Maybe I'm thinking if you go back just to design, maybe, because you did talk about auditing, assessing your equipment and the processes. So maybe start at design. That would be great.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
design recommending solutions. So maybe changing some processes if we're looking at making a change. Design would be something that's determining our key performance indicators. A good key performance indicator might look like having training and signed off on the patient handling equipment for up to 85% of the staff in this calendar year. So just whatever it is that you want to achieve within the short term for your program. And then implement, we would provide the skills and knowledge for the key stakeholders, the care staff, and initiate peer-to-peer training. So if we're looking at training peer leaders, get the peer training started for them and then get them started on their training of their colleagues. And then implementing solutions that you're putting in place. And then sustain, we would provide continued support to maintain a culture of improvement. So periodic audits, oh, that's hard to say, periodic audits or redesign, having a look at your processes and how is the change that you've made working out, getting feedback from your care aides about now that they've implemented new processes, how are they working for them? And then this quote is one that I love to share. The goal of this whole program is really to empower the care partners within the scope of their practice to take ownership of their homes programs. It's often I see people are feeling like their hands are tied and they just have to follow a certain path without making any decisions. But we really want the care partners who are the most knowledgeable about what's going on the floor to weigh in and have feedback and give us information to help make it better for them and for our care receivers. So some resources when you're in that auditing and process mapping phase, there's lots. Safe Care BC has a vast amount of resources on their website and tools for you to use. If you're looking at equipment audits, Arjo has free programs in Arjo Insight, where we'll come in and look at all of your equipment and give you a report about how it's condition, but also the current needs of your care partners is a part of our Insight program, where we look at the mix of your equipment and is it serving your care receivers, as well as is it working well for your care partners. Arjo Clinical Consultants, as an Arjo Clinical Consultants, I provide you with education and training and tools as well to manage your resources. So sling audit tools, mattress audit tools, and quick online training for sling selection. WorkSafe BC has a Handle with Care document that has all kinds of different patient handling and applications of ergonomic requirements that are the standards in BC, as well as there's a provincial safe resident handling standards for MSI programs document. That was a collaborative effort by the health authorities. Surge Learning has a lot of great videos, doesn't necessarily provide the didactic part, which is why peer leadership is so important to have people on your team with good understanding of biomechanics and ergonomics of how the equipment work. And then any other quick reference guides, like any of your manufacturers should be able to provide you with quick reference guides, sling measurement tools to make sure that you're getting the right equipment, videos, manuals, all of this stuff is available for you pretty easily. And then, we want to consider when we're making decisions about what's going into our program, our hierarchy of controls. So when you're auditing your care tasks, this hierarchy of controls can help you make a decision about whether the path forward is safe or whether we need to make a change. So when we're looking at our equipment, we want to look at its working conditions, the accessories that go with it. Do we have the right ones? And is it appropriate for your client base currently, or your resident base currently? We want to look at your management system and your tools. So your policy and procedure should get regularly audited and be something that's accessible to the staff for their review. Your assessment tools, if you're using algorithms, or what do you have for assessment tools and communication tools? And then your processes, so your lifting practices. So the hierarchy of controls looks at most effectively, can we eliminate any risk of hazard to both the care receivers and the care providers? If we can't, are we able to substitute and replace the hazard with something a little bit safer? Engineering controls, are we able to isolate people from the hazards? And in a safe patient handling program, it's pretty hard to engineer controls to isolate people, but we'll have a look through this presentation about what we can do about some of these controls. And then administrative controls, changing the way people work. Are we able to do anything about our tasks or our processes to make it a little safer for people? And then PPE is the least effective control, protecting people with personal protective equipment. As far as safe patient handling programs go, there is equipment that we can add, but always administrative controls, making sure that they're working well with the person, is important. So we'll keep referring to this as we look through each one of the processes. And so looking at the right equipment and the right tools, on the right here, we have a quick algorithm that goes through assessment for our equipment. There's algorithms on the SafeCare site. This one is an ARJO algorithm that we use to support the use of all the equipment for different mobility levels. And there is a lot of different algorithms out there. I think what's most important when you're considering which one to implement for your site is that it has all of the equipment that you're using to mobilize your residents, and that it is a simple and easy tool for the care staff to use. So we would use this when we're determining the right assessment for people, but I also kind of like to break it up because it has the assessment for the equipment on it. I might take the sit to stand assessment piece and post it on my sit to stand lift so that my care staff are always remembered to check for those things at the point of care. And then when we're making our decision about the right method of transfer, the right patient handling tools to support a person with, we always want to put it through this triangle to help us make our decisions if it's the right path forward or not. So this is an equilateral triangle, and it's meant to be that way, indicating that each side of the triangle is equal in length, but also equal in importance. So when I'm choosing the right the care plan for a person or transfer plan for a person, I want to make sure that it's safe for the resident and safe for the care partner. And then at the bottom there, that's consistent with restorative care. So we could, for example, put everyone in ceiling lifts and make it super safe for the residents and the staff. But that's not consistent with restorative care. And if we keep our mind on the positive 8 from the beginning, we want to keep people as mobile and active as possible, which is why it's important to have that restorative care part and maximize the person's functions. So this is from a tool from SafeCare BC. It is the point of care risk assessment, and it's something that we should consider each time that we're going into any transfer or resident assistance situation. I want to think about the person in care. What is their cognitive state and what are their physical abilities? So we will always, of course, refer to the care plan first for the correct transfer method. And that will be our baseline to start our assessment from, to make sure that the person is able to do what it says on their care plan now, and then decide if I need to elevate them to something safer right now because they're not meeting their assessment criteria. Their cognitive state is something that actually, the reason why I took the TIPA Snow course and why I'm teaching TIPA Snow workshops is to get a much better understanding of the person's cognitive state, because we have such a high prevalence of dementia in long-term care. So taking a pause when we're entering a person's space or addressing a care task to evaluate their cognitive state and where they're at right now is just as equally as important as their physical abilities, because it will affect, of course, how their behavior is. The next item, we want to have a look at the environment. Always important to plan the transfer. So when we're planning the transfer, we're looking at the space that we have available. and we want to eliminate as many as possible as the hazards as we can. So removing obstacles, making sure that we have everything that we need in the right place before we start a transfer, adjust the height of the equipment so that we're in good ergonomics. And we want to try and use the space in such a way that we can kind of reduce the amount of turning or moving people when they're in loaded equipment like lifts. So setting up my transfer so that I can use expend at least the least amount of effort as I can. And then the task, again, we want to make sure that we're following the care plan or doing something more supportive. I want to triage a little bit. Is the task urgent? Is there a situation that's unsafe that I need to do something right now? Or can I slow down and make sure that I've done all of the other parts of my point of care risk assessment? And then is the person or am I comfortable with this task or procedure? It's always important to assess, am I comfortable moving forward or should I ask for extra help in this moment? And then the last item is yourself. We always want to make sure that we're calm before we're going into a task so that we don't rush and so that we can see the bigger picture. We want to make sure that we're focused and that we're using the right biomechanics to keep ourselves safe. So we talked about the right, a little bit about the right equipment. We also want to have the right environment. Do you have enough space to use your equipment safely? Now I know brick and mortar that we're not changing too much about that, but it's important to keep in mind the things that are in the room and that we have enough space to use the equipment that we need when we need to. So sometimes we are able to reorganize a room or remove things to a room to accommodate use of the equipment. This is an example of how much space is required to use a sit-to-stand lift. And these bird's eye blueprint drawings are on the back page or the end of every equipment brochure, which you can find on the ARJO website. So if you are needing things like justification to remove furniture or to measure space to make sure that your staff have adequate equipment space, there's a resource for you on the back of each equipment brochure so that you can measure your space. The darker filled in space is how much room it takes for one care partner to work from one side of the bed, and the light blue addition is how much space it's required for 2 care partners to work with a resident from both sides of the bed. So we want to try and plan to move our equipment unloaded. We want to reduce turning loaded equipment, and we want to remove any obstacles based on how much space is required for that piece of equipment. Speaking of keeping things simple, we want to have good communication or clear communication, just tools that make communication really easy. So this mobility assessment, resident mobility assessment, is a tool that ARJO has adopted to help us communicate with our customers about what can a resident do and what can a resident not do, and how do we support them based on their physical abilities. So we have on the left side, we've got a low risk resident who's pretty independent for all of their transfers in green. And then it shows us a spectrum of going to very high risk residents who are completely immobile and put care partners at risk for overload on the far right. You'll notice that these characters are named in alphabetical order to help us remember. A is independent or low risk, all the way to E, which is high risk. And this is just something that we use in our training programs, as well as our customer discussions, to make it really simple for everyone to understand what is the needs of the residents in these situations. So we'll have a look at most of these people as we move through the presentation. And then another Keep It Simple program. If you're not familiar with Teepa Snow's Positive Approach to Care, check her out on YouTube. She's incredible. Her training on assessing people who are living with dementia, understanding why people behave the way that they do, and her approach to supporting those people who are living with cognitive changes is so simple and easy to understand and enlightening. So have a look at Teepa Snow if you haven't already listened to her speak. She's got lots of great stuff on YouTube. So starting out with Barbara, who's a person who we do assist physically, we've got a person who is able to stand on her feet and probably walk, or she might be foot propelling in a wheelchair, but she is able to bear all of her weight and transfer. Often, Barbara probably is living with dementia if she's living in a long-term care home. And one thing that dementia does is it kind of robs us of our skill, but leaves us our strength. So Barbara still is able to probably walk forward, but now maybe she's starting to struggle a little bit with that pivot or the backing up skill, because it takes a lot of coordination and skill to use our feet for turning and backing up. Walking still is okay though. Walking forward isn't so bad. So often we address support for Barbara when she needs help with transfers, with a pivot transfer, or with one or two people. So looking at our hierarchy of controls at the top here, manual handling pivot transfers are a high risk care task for the care partners as well as for the person, and can maybe a little bit easier with a transfer belt. A transfer belt helps us steady a person over their feet, but that does take a little bit of skill and training. And often transfer belts are used a little bit inappropriately, maybe for lifting. So we can eliminate the risk to the care partner by adding a mobility side rail to the bed. And then that way we've saved the care partner. They can supervise or do cueing instead. But we haven't really eliminated the risk to Barbara in some cases if she's not able to use that tool effectively, or if we don't want her to always mobilize herself out of bed. So we'll move to the next hierarchy of controls item, which is substitution. At the bottom here, we've got a standing and raising aid that kind of acts as a portable pole or and a pivot device, as well as something that can help me back somebody up. So by substituting the transfer belt, which it gives me a little bit control, but is still a bit of risk, and by substituting for the bed mobility, which might still be a risk to Barbara, with the standing and raising pivot device, we can reduce the risk to both the caregiver and the resident. So if we have a person trying to stand up in a device like this one, then they can't do it, then we know we can move them up to the next most supportive device, or the next level on that mobility, the mobility gallery tool. And this is something that helps us make it really easy for our decision making, to know when to move people up to the next most supportive device if they can do it. Whereas when we're doing it manually, we might just put in a little bit more effort to get them into their transfer situation, which might put us more at risk. So moving to the next mobility category, we have Carl, which is our moderate assist resident. Carl is somebody who's got dynamic sitting balance. He can sit in a wheelchair, and he might be able to foot propel with one foot. So he can tolerate at least partial weight bearing on one or both feet. And as long as he can follow instructions, then he's an ideal candidate for a sit-to-stand lift. So we want to have good understanding from our coaches or our care staff about when is a sit-to-stand lift good and when is a sit-to-stand lift not so good. So on the right-hand side, we have a picture of what does it look like when a sit-to-stand lift is going well, and where is my resident at risk in the sit-to-stand lift. So indicated with the green angles, we can see an open hip angle with the sling nice and low, not up in the axillary area, is positive. And we see on the right with red, a flexed hip angle with the sling right up underneath axillary area, putting pressure on nerves, is a risk for my care receiver. It's probably also a risk for my care partner, because honestly, in this position, and that's me in the picture, so I can say it's very uncomfortable under my arms. It's hurting, and I'm probably encouraging my care partners to rush. So what can we do as far as managing our controls? Can we eliminate this transfer? Well, we could move the person up to the passive lift, but there's some things that we can try first. We can't really substitute And engineering controls is tough, but administrative controls is where we can make a difference for this person in the sit-to-stand lift. We can provide coaching for the staff about sling fitting and sling placement, as well as education for the staff about how to coach a resident when they're using the sit-to-stand lift for their success. If all of those measures fail, then the next solution is to substitute and move up to the next most supportive device. Before we move to the next supportive device, though, let's have a quick look at maneuvering the equipment, because we do see a lot of injuries happening from staff having to maneuver loaded equipment. We talked a little bit earlier about maybe not moving the equipment when it's loaded if that's possible. Just going straight forward and back is ideal for planning my transfer. It's that turning and pivoting where we tend to see a lot of people struggle. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some physics here. Torque is the measure of force that can make an object rotate around its axis. And on the left-hand side, I've just got a little example of a hand moving a nut on its own and a hand using a lever or a wrench to maneuver the nut or to spin the nut. So you've probably experienced this. You know, it's much harder to do it with your hand, and adding a tool makes it much easier. And the difference is that length of the lever, the longer the lever is, the more torque or the greater force that I have to maneuver that nut. Now, how does that relate to maneuvering the equipment? The person in the middle here, we've got a resident standing on a sit-to-stand lift and a person with a blue shirt maneuvering the lift. When we plant our feet and turn the lift, we're like that hand trying to loosen that nut manually. We're making ourselves the pivot point of the turn, and that requires a lot of force. And in our case, when we're maneuvering the lift, we're twisting to maneuver the lift. So all of that force is going to our knees, our shoulders, our backs. So an administrative control is just thinking about changing the way that we work a little bit when maneuvering the equipment. On the far right, sorry, I made this diagram myself, so it's not as beautiful as it could be, but the fulcrum, or the turning point, is indicated as the brake on the left top-hand side of the lift. So we've applied one brake. My partner moves to the opposite handle. It creates leverage in between the brake and where they're holding on, so that when they push, they get greater torque and it's easier to rotate the lift around the fulcrum. So by changing a little bit our administrative controls and learning a little bit about physics, we can make it safer for the care partner and easier on the resident with nice, smooth, steady movements. So that's an example of the right care skills from the middle of my positive 8. Okay, so moving to Doris, our maximum assist resident, who's usually pretty dependent and higher risk for the care staff. Now Doris, she needs a passive lift for her transfers. And often we're concerned mostly about getting our people toileted, right? Going from the sit-to-stand to the full lift is a tough one when we think about our main goal of getting people toileted. For the transfer, it's not so bad. So as far as eliminating the risk, we can't. We still have to get our people toileted, and they need a full support lift. Now in this picture, I've got 2 examples of toileting slings, which are a fairly high-risk tool by the time we put our people into the passive lift. The picture in the middle, unfortunately, is a little blurry, but it's showing good posture in a toileting sling, leaning back and extending at the hips. And on the right, we see poor posture with the sling again up underneath the arms, a fixed hip angle, and arms out to the side. So in this case, we can try administrative controls of education for the staff to help work with the resident and fit the sling. But usually what we're going to have to do is substitute and look at a full sling for this person's transfer. Now, full slings are all designed for the most part with toileting in mind, for getting people on and off the toilet. We might have to a little bit change the way that we are dressing and undressing people. But in this case, this transfer wouldn't fit through our triangle of decision-making because it is not safe for the resident to be hanging by their axillary nerves there. So now that we're going into a passive sling, we've got some things to consider. Sling selection, there's a lot of different kinds of slings out there, and residents need to be assessed for the right style and size of sling by a qualified care partner. If you're currently looking for more education on sling selection, I have a quick presentation that we can do virtually, and I can walk you through the different styles and sizes of slings and help you with your decision making as far as sling selection. Resident sling styles and sizes should be documented on the care plan, but also as far as communication is concerned, it should be really easy for the care staff to find a sling information for a resident. Often homes are posting it right in their bathroom, right beside where their sling hangs, a picture of that sling, so that we can know for sure if there's no sling on their hook in their room, I know exactly what sling that I'm looking for and the size. And then again, considering the champion model of training in-house experts or peer leaders is important for the management of that sling program to make sure that people have the right sling and that their sling is communicated easily to the staff. When it comes to repositioning in bed, residents should be assessed for their ability to assist with the repositioning. If they're able to help a little bit, then slide sheets are a great tool. If they're not able to help, then we should be looking at repositioning slings and making sure that the mechanical lifts are doing the lifting and the repositioning rather than the care staff. And then again, the method of mobilization should be documented in the care plan or wherever else it needs to be communicated to make it easy for the staff. And then the last item there, safety and inventory management is important. And often it's something that WorkSafe BC is looking at when they come in and audit homes. Slings should be checked at the point of care for their structural integrity. Like, are they going to break during this transfer or are they going to hold together? And then Health Canada has some standards and guidelines to help us to know what to do as far as sling inspection as well, and when to look at our slings. So the document that gives us guidance on slings is CSA Z10535, and guideline 6.3.11.1 says slings, clips, and attachment points should be inspected. So like the loop part should be inspected for frayed or discolored or weakness. And then the fabric should be inspected for any tears or frays or rotten areas or cracks or worn areas that are a predisposition for sling failure. So all of those items would require a sling to be removed. And then the CSA also recommends that homes do a documented risk assessment at least twice a year per the manufacturer's instructions. So if this is something that isn't currently being done at your home or you'd like some guidance or help with it, I have documented risk assessment tools so that you can track and manage your inventory. And we'll send out some information about that after the webinar today. Okay, back to looking at our residents' tasks and processes. Emma was our most dependent resident, so probably she might be completely bedridden at this point, or maybe she's up in a Broda-style chair, but she is dependent on caregivers for everything all the time. She is very high risk for static and dynamic overload, so for overloading our care staff when they're working. And our goal is comfort measures for Emma. So often, Emma, we're doing her pad changes in the bed now, or most of her care is all happening on the bed. And as we saw on the last slide, if she's able to help, slide sheets are a great tool. If she's not able to help, we should really start looking at things like slings for repositioning on the bed. So when we work through our hierarchy of controls, we can't eliminate the task. We have to manage the skin and the care. We can substitute tools. So we want to make sure that we have the right tool for the right job. And we want to make sure that the care staff understand when to choose the right tools or that it's documented in the care plan. So slide sheets for people who can help a bit, repositioning slings for people who can't. And then you might already have some tools in your home that are sitting unused when these care tasks are going on that can make it a little bit easier. Repositioning slings, like in this picture here, can turn a person and hold a person on their side for those residents who are difficult to keep on their side. But it still requires us to lean over the bed and hold awkward positions while we're cleaning. So if you do have care tools sitting unused, like this hygiene chair at the bottom that lifts up the person's bum off the seat, it makes pad changing really nice and ergonomic and comfortable for both the care partner and the care receiver. So providing that peer leadership training, looking at all of the equipment that you have and making sure that people understand that they have options as far as how to support the care receivers is really important for managing safety. So lastly, that was a lot of. There are some programs available to help support your team, especially if you're kind of getting it kicked off again. Safe Care BC has a ton of amazing resources on their website. They have a bunch of different programs, including but not limited to client handling, violence prevention, and the gentle, persuasive approach to caring for people with dementia. They have safe handling workshops, so mixed delivery workshops. Half of it's online and then half of it's instructor led. And then also they have coach training days, which is a mixed delivery as well, 2 or 3 hours online and a couple of days of instructor led. And then our clinical team, which is me in BC, also has outcome clinical programs in the areas of client handling, supportive hygiene, pressure injury prevention, as well as I offer those Deep as Snow positive approach to dementia care workshops. And the programs that we offer through our clinical team are really customizable. They range from a full day workshop in your home working with your equipment in your space, and can be as short as a 1 hour instructor led trainer so that your care partners can then move training forward. And some great resources have been developed to support your trainers after our training programs. We provide return demonstration document check sheets that your trainers can use to make sure that they're hitting all of the important information when they're training their colleagues moving forward. So my information is there at the bottom, and Safe Care BC's learning space information is there at the bottom, both for you to check out or contact at your convenience. And with that, I'll ask Anna to come back and maybe she'll comment a little bit more on the Safe Care educational resources.
There we go. Thanks, Jennifer. Jennifer did mention earlier on in her presentation around the initiatives and having that peer coach person in your workplace. And I think the one workshop that we have, the Safe Handling Peer Coach Training, is a great resource for our members to look at. It says on there, it is partially online, 2 to 3 hours, and then 2 days of instructor led. That 2-day instructor led portion includes a mentorship piece. And so what participants do in that particular course is they're not learning how to use specific equipment. It's all around safe resident handling, keeping in mind the care provider and body mechanics. So it's how to keep yourself safe. And then there's a mentorship piece in there. Well, they will teach back some of the options and be mentored. And so when they go into their own workplace, the intent isn't that they reteach that workshop. It's that they can provide those in the moment sessions or quick sessions in their workplace and have that peer coach training to help educate the other staff in the workplace that might be doing safe resident or safe client handling. The Safe Handling Mixed Delivery Workshop is ideal for people who are care providers who are doing safe handling in the workplace. And again, that's 4 hours online, and then there's a 4-hour instructor-led portion. Again, the focus is on body mechanics and safe handling for the person that is providing care. And I am actually going to share my screen again. And oops, perfect. And can you see that slide there, Jennifer? Is that showing up, the questions? Yep. Okay, great. Thank you, Jennifer, for your presentation. We did have a few questions that have come up, which I'll pose to Jennifer in a minute, but if you have any questions that you want to submit, you can do that in the Q&A section, and we will be able to ask Jennifer those as they come up. Before we get to those, I want to thank you all for attending today. When you do leave the webinar, you'll be asked to complete a short, very quick feedback survey with 4 very quick questions. We'd really appreciate if you could fill those out as it helps us understand if these webinars are working for you. So if you take a couple of minutes when you sign out, we would really appreciate if you can fill out that survey. One of the questions that came up, and I know, Jennifer, we hear this from members quite a bit, is that the staff, the care providers, they are burnt out. And there's often, they talk about like a lack of money or budget for either training or equipment, but that big piece is kind of that burnout piece. And is that something that you've come across at all in your work? Yeah.
This is the number one comment that I get all the time. There's no money and everyone's exhausted. But the BCNU did a survey of their membership in 2021 to see, we're losing people from the industry due to burnout, and COVID was really hard on everybody, right? And they asked the nurses what would make it better, and the nurses told them, of course they did, right? Just like, one, money, debt forgiveness, and better incentives, of course. But the number 2 thing that they asked for, that they wanted to enhance their work, was more care skills, opportunities to mentor. We have like decreasing resources in the age of our expertise, and they're wonderful resources that maybe we're not getting the best from, because they just haven't been given the opportunity to be elevated in their position into a mentorship position. So giving them the right skills, especially if they're interested, and a lot of them are interested in making it better, making it easier. A lot of the complaints is all of these new staff, they don't know how to use the stuff, they don't know what they're doing. And they'd definitely be willing, a lot of them, to step into a leadership or mentorship role given the opportunity. One of the key things for the coach programs, though, probably yours as well as mine, is that we need to allocate a little bit of time off the floor to be doing that job. And so it's often seen as a positive change when there's attention being paid by the management to providing these programs and giving the opportunity to the staff to elevate their workforce. So it helps with culture to provide this coach training, in my experience. And it's tough. I know there's a lot of we can't, but like, some people are doing it. You can give it a try.
Yeah. And the one thing I love about our peer coach training program is having those people that are trained, and they can provide that in the moment. So if there are things that come up in the workplace around perhaps new staff coming in that might need refresher training, you can do that in the moment. It can be a 10 or a 15-minute quick gathering of people to kind of go over that. You don't have to take them off the floor for an extended time to provide specific training. You have those resources right in house, and you can use them on an as needed basis, or again, on a preventative piece, right? So yeah. I think that's great.
And these passionate people, when they learn stuff, they tell everybody.
Yes.
It's really exciting. Like, the learning's going to happen even when it's not organized.
Absolutely. The other thing that has come up, and I don't know if you have an answer for this, and we've heard this from our members, is the increased acuity of residents that are coming into either long-term care, or now we're even seeing it in assisted living. And so they're being asked to take clients or residents that normally they haven't seen in their homes before, and they may not have all the ideal equipment to be able to provide care to those residents. So is there anything around that you can suggest, or things that you've seen?
Yeah, I see it a lot. And actually, probably 25% of my work in the last year has been bariatrics. So not only like we have equipment to care for people, but not of this size. So making sure that you're aware of what you need and asking for it, I guess, before you accept clients that you need equipment to handle. Like the only way that we can manage this high acuity and this high heavy workload is with technology. Otherwise, all of the load goes to the bodies of the care partners, and
Right.
it's a resource that we can't afford to like waste, or there's no extra, right? Everyone's
Mhm.
burnt out. So um i I do see homes advocating for getting bariatric equipment put in place before they'll accept anyone from the health authorities, and making sure that they're not accepting people that they can't manage. So I know a lot of I hear people going into hospitals and meeting the clients before they come in to make sure that they have a clear picture. I don't know if there's time and resources for that, but that's just what I'm hearing is going on.
Great. Thank you. That's great. That's about all the time we have for questions. If you do have a question that you think of after the webinar that you would like Jennifer to answer, or something we can help you with, please contact us. The best email is training@safecarebc.ca, and we'll get to your question and answer that for you. Now, before we go, I want to invite you to check out our upcoming events. We've got a lot going on, so please go to our website and have a look. We've got 3 webinars listed here: Neurodiversity in the Workplace on March 21st. There's more to you than you can see on March 28th, and Managing Conflict Safety and Respectfully on April 10th. And one that I want to highlight at the bottom there, our Safety Den. So our Safety Den is our Dragon's Den inspired event, and it showcases ideas from people like you in the sector, the continuing care workers that are passionate about improving workplace health and safety. So it's kind of the perfect mix of education and entertainment, and it highlights the safety innovations in the continuing care sector. This year, we've upped the prize to $2,000. The deadline for submission is April 1st. So if you have something in your workplace that you're doing that you think would be a great idea for Safety Den, and it doesn't have to be anything huge or grandiose, it could be a small thing that you're doing that's making a difference in your workplace, we would love to hear from you. So please reach out to us. If you have an idea for a submission and you're struggling a bit with how to do that, reach out to us, and we can certainly help you with your submission. Information is on our website. If you do need more information, please reach out to us. All the information is on our website. So I invite you to think about Safety Den, because the more submissions we have, the better.